Okay, good afternoon to one and all. In the previous class, we discussed about what is ground improvement techniques, what are the different factors acting on these ground improvement techniques. That means in different conditions of the soil, which type of technique we have to implement, what are the different factors for those techniques, and how much amount of money required and workmanship required, and what are the different factors involved in these techniques. Those things we discussed in the previous class, but in today's class we have to discuss about mainly on different types of soils and their properties. Before going to choose any these ground improvement techniques, first of all we need to have some important knowledge on these types of soils and the parameters involved in these soil properties. Okay, before going to construct any these ground improvement techniques or implement these techniques, we need to have proper vision on those particular area. What are the conditions involved in those particular area, how we have to mitigate those conditions by using these techniques, how much amount of material should be required for those proper conditions, and what are the different factors are affecting on those particular area, if they be wind or water or any other different factors, climatic factors or natural factors or any other external factors like is there any vehicle flow or any population disturbance, like that we need to identify. After the identification of all of those, we need to mainly concentrate on these soil parameters. What type of soil is situated there, we need to have a proper identification. These soils can be classified into different types depending upon our field. That means normally we are studied in our engineering, geology and geotechnical engineering, we are having different sorts of soils like black cotton soil, clay soil, silty soils. These three are the major parts of the soils. Okay, today we'll have to discuss those things are discussed in the previous class. How we have to work with our soil, that means మనం ఆ సాయిల్ని ఎట్లా యూటిలైజ్ చేసుకోవాలి. The most important thing in the identification of our soil type and work with it is we need to remember the golden rule. That means some important rules and basic principles we need to remember before going to work on these soils. All soil types have good points and that can be improved, even the best loam soils with benefit and from medicinal organic matter, such that the above point is mainly telling that different types of soils are there. For those different types of soils we are having huge amount of good properties, such that we need to locate the particular point, what is the good point on those particular soil. We need to pick that. After the picking of those point, we need to work on it particular property of the soil. We need to improve the strength by using that particular property. All the different kinds of soils are not having same properties. Some soils are having a good binding properties, some soils are having good particle size, some soils are having good abrasion and adhesion, some are having huge amount of shear strength. Like that, different kinds of soils having different physical properties, so that we need to pick the good physical property or any other which is good to the particular soil, so that we have to work on those particular property to increase the strength of particular soil matter. It is the main working principle in this point. Next one, we are having different kinds of soils. On those, first major one is heavy or clay soils. In those heavy or clay soils, what are the major golden points? Okay, we need to study those golden points. First of all, this holds water but also breaks the dry in the summer. That means holds water means whenever there is a rainy season, in particularly, that means whenever there is a rainy season, in those particular season the total soil will absorb huge amount of water. Okay, that is the main backdrop. and but also it breaks and dries in the summer season. That means బ్రేక్స్ అండ్ రైట్స్ మీన్స్ మనకి పైన సాయిల్ మొత్తం కూడా మనకి అన్ఈవెన్నెస్ అనేది ఈజీగా వచ్చేస్తుంది ఇన్ కేస్ ఆఫ్ దిస్ సమ్మర్ సీజన్స్లో. అండ్ at a time in the winters rainy seasons we are having huge amount of water logging capacity for those clay soils and heavy soils. Next point is the however the clay is very good and holding nutrients and moisture and very fertile as long as you can break it down with the addition of organic matter and grit. That means the clay soils are very good property to taking nutrients. That means these kind of soils are very much useful for the agricultural purposes, not for constructional purposes. So that these kinds of soils we have to use in agricultural purposes in some kinds of lands. That means in some of the places we are constructing different kinds of roads and other atmospheric agents. That means some tourism places we need to build in our country or in our state, so that we need to develop these kinds of land in those places such that there may be a huge amount of vegetation because of these organic matters and others, so that there will be a good impression to the tourists and other. Next one we are having that this will be enable the roots of the plants to get through the nutrients more easily and course makes plants less back breaking for you. That means this will enable the roots of the plants to get through the nutrients. That means enable and disable. Enable means మనకి ఇది ఈజీగా ఈ యొక్క ప్లాంట్స్ అనే దానికి మనకి గ్రోకి ఉపయోగపడుతూ ఉంటుంది త్రూ ద nutrients. That means whatever the nutrients present in those particular soils in the form of these organic matters and other peat like grit materials, those will be useful for the growing of plants. In some cases if the particles are very coarse, those make planting less back breaking for you. That means if the particle sizes are very coarse, that means there is low friction to root to the normal soil, so that in those cases we are having less amount of vegetation. If the particles are very micro nature, that means the automatically plants will be rising very easily. If the particles are very coarser, that means like our small baby chips like that, the plants will not grow as easy as possible. That is the main backdrop in these heavy clay soils. Next one, try and avoid walking on the soils too much as they will compact it to hard pan. That means try and avoid walking on the soils means you won't have to walk on those particular soils because there may be a chance of skidding due to these particle sizes of varying due to micro nature and macro nature of particle sizes, so that we need to compact as hard as possible. That means by using these different kinds of rollers we need to compact the particular soil so that the total surface will be strengthened. After that we need to construct any constructional projects after compaction of the particular project. This is the major properties of the clay soils. First of all we are having it will holds as amount of huge water in rainy seasons and automatically it will rise in a summer season. That is the major point. And second one is the in these particular soils we are having huge amount of nutrients, so that those kind of soils are useful for vegetative growing. That means whenever there is a need for greenery, so that we need to use this kind of soil matter for those structures, and it will enables the plants if the particle size is more. That means if the particle size is very tiny, it will encourages the growing plants. Automatically particle size is more, it will decreases the plant growing nature. These are the main points in the heavy and clay soils. Next one we are having a sandy soils. That means the particle size is the particle size and the particle bonding will be very low in case of these sandy soils. Automatically these sandy soils will bulking. That means the total sand will be in the form of normal silicon, so that there may be a bulking capacity. First of all we need to know what it loses water as quickly, so that being particularly free drainage. However you can improve the both of these factors with the addition of organic matter and soil and improve the course. Many plants thrive in a free draining soil. It also warm up as quickly in the spring seasons. That means that it loses water very quickly, being particularly free draining. That means in those kind of soils water will not stagging. That means whenever we are going on particular seasons, that means whenever we are going to beach, in the entering of the beach we are having huge amount of sand, but those water will not be stacked on those particular sand. Some amount of water will be there to moisture limit. After that we are not having any sand due to these pores. Huge amount of pores are lie between these sand particles. That means there may be a huge amount of voids and gaps, so that the water will not survive on the top layer of the sandy soils automatically. Due to this draining nature of the soil, automatically water will be drains easily, as easy as possible water will be drains from the layers of the soil. So that by constructing a pits, that means ఇంకుడు గుంతలు అనేవి కన్స్ట్రక్ట్ చేస్తున్నప్పుడు మనకి ఈ యొక్క టాప్ లేయర్స్లో బాటమ్ లేయర్స్లో మనకి యొక్క శాండ్ అనే దాన్ని ప్లేస్ చేస్తూ ఉంటారు. వై బికాస్ దీస్ హ్యావింగ్ హై డ్రైనేజ్ ప్రాపర్టీస్. మనకు వాటర్ని ఈజీగా డ్రైనేజ్ చేస్తుంది కాబట్టి అటువంటి ఇంకుడు గుంతలో వాటర్లో మనకి యొక్క శాండీ సాయిల్స్ని ఎక్కువగా వాడుతూ ఉంటాం మనం. To improve the both these factors in addition of organic matter. That means in addition of organic matter, and it improves the coarse particles. Organic matter means the matter which is consisting only carbon and hydrogen as a basic ingredients. Normally different soils having different ingredients. That means in terms of chemical mass, that means we are normally clay soils we are having ferrous and others. Normally montmorillite, egmorillite, like that different properties of materials are present in different kinds of soils. Likely in sandy soils major part we are having silica as a major constituents, and it is having free drainage property of the soil. It also warms up quickly in the spring seasons. That means spring means manaki శీతాకాలం. స్ప్రింగ్ సీజన్లో we don't have a huge amount of water. It is the main property of these sandy soils. That means it loses water as easy as possible. Whenever we feed some amount of organic matter, the water will be restrains up to a particular limit. In the spring seasons the total water will be dried and the total surface will be wettened. Means warms means wettened. Next one we are having these chalky soils. Normally these kinds of soils are not available due to some mineral-like properties. That means whenever we have to go for some kinds of places, those who are having huge amount of mineral capacities on those particular soils, like these quartzites and montmorillites, halides, like that we are having different mineral properties lies in the soil layers. That means the top layer will be look like in a normal soil. When we remove the top layers of the particular soil, we will absorb these kind of chalky and other kinds of soils because of these chemical compositions of particular matter and huge amount of deposition due to weathering and erosion properties, like that. First of all, it is a alkaline. That means alkaline means acidic nature, so it will not suit plants in those particular require erogenous soils. That means in a few conditions the plants will not grow as easy as possible because of this chemical nature. That means the roots are not propagates easily because of this chemical. Means we are having huge amount of acidity. Whenever the root pass through this acidic matter, automatically there will be no biogems in the particular roots, so that the plants will not survive on those particular areas because of this alkaline capacities and acidic nature of the particular soils. Some soils contains large clumps of chalk. That means మనకి ఒక సున్నపురాయి అంటారు తెలుగులో. సున్నపురాయి యొక్క నిక్షేపాలు చాలా ప్రదేశాల్లో మనకి ఉంటాయి. ఎక్కువగా మనకి ప్రకాశం డిస్టిక్ అండ్ నెక్స్ట్ వన్ మాచర్ల యొక్క ఏరియాస్లో మొత్తంలో కూడా మనకి లైమ్ డిపాజిట్స్ అనేవి సాయిల్స్లో ఎక్కువగా ఉంటాయి. దోస్ కైండ్స్ ఆఫ్ సాయిల్స్ ఆర్ కాల్డ్ సింప్లీ దీస్ చాకీ సాయిల్స్. Those who are having calcium as a main constituent and other calcium supplements, that means carbonates and hydroxides and peroxides like that. Others a mixture of chalk and clay. It is normally free draining, that means they have a free drainage property, means water will be flowing as easily. And next one we are having a but maybe low in nutrients, that means there are no nutrients. What is a nutrient? Those are useful for the growing. Those are called nutrients. In our body we are having nutrients in terms of vitamins and other proteins like that. If there are huge amount in our body, automatically our growth will be there. If there is no nutrients in our body, there will be no growth. Simply for plants and other small amount of greenery we are having nutrients. If the nutrients are enriched in a particular soils, there may be a huge amount of growth on those particular area. Normally in forest areas we are having huge amount of greenery and trees because of this enrichment of nutrients on those particular areas. In normally hilly areas we are not having nutrients because the total soil will be covered by this hard rock strata, so that there may be no nutrients for the plants, so that there may be no vegetation. Likely we are having deserts, that means in the deserts also we are having only this silica, that means sandy soils we are having. In those sandy soils also we are not having these nutrients, so that there may be less quantity of plant growth. Only these cactus plants are rising on those sandy soils and these mountains areas, so that the nutrients are very much useful for the growing of plants. Next one we are having organic matter, so that it will be both structural and nutritional content of the soil. That means organic matter will be depends upon structural and nutritional contents of the soil. In those chalky soils we are not having organic matter, only we are having acidic content. That means properties of calcium and other supplements of the calcium. That means the calcium oxide, calcium carbonate and the calcium sulfates, CaSO4 like that. CaSO4, CaCO3 and CaO. Those are the major constituents which are lies in these chalky soils, so that these are useful for the production of cement industries and other marble industries. Not marble, cement industries only. Next one we are having this normal soil. That means it retains moisture without impeding drainage. That means it retains moisture. Retains means normally if there is any rains or any rainy seasons we are having, so that automatically the water will be staggered on particular soils because of low permeability and less quantity of voids on those particular soils. If the voids are free, that means there may be we are having drainage properties. If the voids are less, we have to face these watertight structures and captures nutrients and allows oxygen to circulate. That means if there is a water, automatically water will absorb a huge amount of these nutrients through biosynthesis. Likely whenever there is a huge amount of water stacking on a particular area for few days, automatically the water will be turned into green color due to this biosynthesis and bacterial actions. Automatically in the surrounding places whatever the organic matter is deposited, those organic matter will be decomposed by using this what hydrogen and oxygen which are present in the water molecules, so that we are having a huge amount of smell coming from those particular lands because of this biosynthesis and other processes. Automatically due to those biosynthesis there may be a chance of getting nutrients. That means a huge amount of nitrogen is present in the air. Those nitrogen will be absorbed by this water and that will be converted into manure, natural manure, so that there may be a chance of huge amount of rising of these greenery and plants after the evaporation of total water from the particular land. Automatically normally this process is happening on those places there is no construction and other maintenance. That means no maintenance means no drainage on those particular area. If there is no drainage means automatically water will be stacks in this particular area. Automatically there is a stacking of water. The remaining process will be takes place as easily as possible, so that there may be a chance of rising of greenery. That means not useful greenery. Those are పిచ్చి మొక్కలు అంటూ ఉంటాం, అవన్నీ కూడా ఈజీగా మొలుస్తూ ఉంటాయి కొన్ని కొన్ని ల్యాండ్స్లో బికాస్ ఆఫ్ దీస్ యాక్షన్స్. It is normally contains equal quantities of sands, clay and silt and other organic matter. That means the total land will be formed by the action of erosion. First of all, we need to know the erosion. This erosion will mainly causes due to the flow of particular amount of water and wind. Whenever there is a flow of water in particularly rainy seasons, the water will be dropped from the top layers to the down layers because of these rains and others, so that the water will not sustain in a particular position. Whenever there is a slope, automatically this water will be dragging from high level areas to low level areas. Okay, due to those dragging of water from one place to another place, automatically if there is any matter lies on the particular top surface of the soil, automatically with the help of this water movement, those also be moving along with this water, so that the total matter will be deposited on a particular land where there is no proper drainage facilities. Automatically along with those, we are having huge amount of this sand, clay and silt. Normally this sand will be formed by the decomposition of this huge amount of rocks by weathering actions. You all know about this weathering, or you studied about in engineering geology. Like that, engineering geology, we are having different kinds of rocks, so that we are having sedimentary rocks, igneous rocks and metamorphic rocks. Due to metamorphism, we are having this property of formation of different kinds of soils. Likely these sandy soils also formed due to the action of this metamorphism and other clays. That means normally in red soils we are having loose binding between particles, so that whenever there is a happening of these rains, automatically the top layer will be eroded and the total water will be seems to be in the red color. In some of the rivers, the water will be seems to be in the color of red, and some of the rivers were having black color due to the presence of those kinds of lands nearer to the rivers. So that automatically with the help of this erosion, the total sand and mud particles are traveled through the water and deposited on a particular place where there is no proper drainage facilities. Automatically all those water can be obtained in the color of the matter which is nearer to the those rivers because of this erosion process and other metamorphism processes. Automatically the water will be changes its colors. If there is no drainage means, automatically the total amount of water will stagger in a particular position of the land. After the evaporation of the water in simply spring seasons and summer seasons, the only matter will sustain on a particular land with the some binding properties, so that these sand particles, clay particles and silt particles and some amount of organic matter, so that these normal lands are formed. In these normal lands we are having huge amount of organic matter compared to these three matters like sandy soils, silty soils and clay soils. Next one, we are having this loam, sand, silt and other soils identification. How we have to identify the type of soil, by which properties we need to observe the soil, and on which principles we have to decide the particular soil. Mainly plants are quite picky about this type of soils in which they live. That means in huge amount of places we are observing greenery. That means in those places plants are suitable to grow. That means if the plants are suitable to grow means, automatically the soil will have some amount of organic matter and there may be some sort of friction to their roots to the soil strata. such that there may be a chance of growing plants. If there is no friction between the roots of the plants and the particular soil strata, there will be no large plants will be rises, such that in the desert areas there may be huge amount of sand but no plants are there. Why? Because there is no friction between the roots and particular soil strata, so that there may be no chance to growing plants in the deserts. But in case of our pedestrian system, that means plateau systems, in those plateau systems we are having huge amount of soils with proper friction between those roots and others, so that there may be a chance of huge amount of plants are growing. Particularly in Himalayas and others, we are having tall trees, those are having more than 1,000 meters and others. Why? Because this amount of friction and other things, and huge amount of peat and organic matter, and availability of plenty of water throughout the year. All those are the major affecting factors for such type of growing of plants. Okay, in this one we are having therefore the identifying where gardens and other kind of soils, we have to help to know other particular plants will be well in our gardens without soil. That means nowadays we are having different kinds of soils, different kinds of gardenings without soil also. They are simply rising plants with the help of these hydroponics and others. All those are advanced structures. Without soil they are simply rising the plants and growing vegetables and other granaries. Next one we are having soil abundant. You should just skip using these plants altogether. That means many of the plants are quite strictly about the soils. ఎక్కువ శాతం మొత్తం ప్లాంట్స్ మొత్తం కూడా మనకి సాయిల్ ద్వారానే ఎక్కువగా పండుతూ ఉంటాయి. దేర్ ఫోర్ ఐడెంటిఫికేషన్ ఆఫ్ యువర్ గార్డెన్స్ కైండ్ ఆఫ్ సాయిల్ విల్ హెల్ప్ యూ టు know whether the particular plants will do well in this your garden without soil. That means particular soil, whenever we want to make a particular garden in our surroundings, we need to have some sort of this clay sand. That means if there is no proper clay sand and any other material, there is no rising of gardening plants. So that first of all we need to choose the particular garden by the help of this soil strata. Up to 3 meters or 4 meters depth we have to fill with this clay and soil strata. There may be a chance of huge amount of greenery for those particular areas. This is only for your identification. Next one, we are having these soil types and affects drainage. Normally in the previous points we discussed, different kinds of soils are having different granular size. That means each and every grain having some amount of thickness and diameter. Those things are mentioned with the help of D1, D2, D3, D10. That means diameter of the particle will be ranges from 1 to 5 mm, below 10 mm, like that. We have to mention particular soil particle sizes in D10, D1, D5, D10, D20, D40, and up to D100. We need to mention those properties of the soil. And these affects different drainage properties, like black cotton soils arrest the drainage flow. Red soils we have the flowing capacity of good amount of drainage through them. Like sandy soils will not having drainage properties because of no bonding on them. Okay, what are the drainage properties, how they affects due to different soils? First of all, we are having these sandy soils. Most people associate sandy textures with those they feel between these toes at the beach, and the feeling is similar in sandy soils. That means here we are having term of beach. That means whenever we are going to beach, there is, when we are simply walking on the surface of the beach, that means we want to move as fast as possible because of there is less amount of friction between our feet and top soil layer, so that we are having to skip on those particular soils as easily because of this less amount of friction. If there is huge amount of friction means we need to have huge amount of force application on the land, and we need to reback and come as fast as possible on particular soils. This is the major difference between the sandy soils and normal soils. There may be a less amount of friction. We are feeling similar in sandy soils. That means our toes means మన యొక్క అరికాలు అంటాం, మన పాదాలు అనేవి కూడా మనకి శాండీ సాయిల్స్లో ప్రాపర్గా మనం వేయలేము బికాస్ ఆఫ్ దిస్ స్కిప్పింగ్ నేచర్ అండ్ స్కిడ్డింగ్ నేచర్ on those particular sandy soils. Its particles are largest of all soil particle types, ranging from 0.05 to 0.10 millimeters. That means the particle size is as much as possible because of this sand content, that means silica content. In while we compare with the other kinds of soils, we are having clay soils, silty soils, black cotton soils, red soils. Among all those kinds of soils, we are having huge amount of particle size is lies in only silty soils, so that the particle sizes are ranging between 0.05 to 0.10 millimeters mm, so that a small and 1 to 2 millimeters at large end. That means large end means sometimes we are having 1 and 2 mm stones. That means a small particle sizes also having in these sandy soils because of those erosion of rocks and other stratas. Next one we are having is the factor gives wet or dry sandy soils a greenish texture when we rub it between the two fingers, and we will make it soil light and crumbly even when you try to stick it together when you are in your hand. That means the factor gives wet or dry sandy soil. If you take some quantity of the particular soil and you have to rub in between your fingers, automatically due to the heat developed between your fingers, the total quantity of the water will be evaporates up to some content. After that we are having only dry particles in our hand. That is the major phenomena explaining in this third point. When we will get a particular amount of texture means మన యొక్క ఆకృతి అంటాం తెలుగులో. Texture we will get because of this rubbing between our fingers, and it makes soil light. That means the particles evaporates, water vapor automatically evaporates, so that the density of the particular sandy soils will be decreases, so that we will feel it at a light material. That is the major content. Sandy soils drains very quickly. That means whenever we are having these sandy soils, so that they will drain as quickly, so that we are having slow sand filters and rapid sand filters in our environmental engineerings to purify the water. In this purpose, this sand is used as a filtering materials in slow sand filters and rapid sand filters because of this very quick drainage properties of sandy soils. We need to connect one subject to one subject because we have to better communication and understanding of subjects while we are having, because of we have to work on totally soil. Without soil there is no construction. We need to construct each and every project on the soil itself. Some of the projects are constructed in the water. There may be a foundation will be rests on soil, so that we have to mainly focus on these parameters of the soils and kinds of soils types. Next one we are having the silt soils. In those silt soils, so what is the particle size we are having, what is the drainage properties we need to have, also we have to study. Many of the people think that loam as the intermediate between the sand and clay. That means loam is the nomenclature of a particular sand. That means the loam is very microparticles that having, so that it lies between sand and silt. They are calling sand and clay. But mid-sized soil particles are referred as a silt. That means mid-size soil particles. Previously we were observed clay, that means sandy soils. In the sandy soils we are having particle size ranging between 0.05 to 0.10. That means that is the most largest particle in these types of soils. After that we are having this silty soil, means the size may be decreases compared to this sandy soil, so that we are having a size of 0.002 to 0.05 millimeters in terms of this silty soils. Silty soil is as fine as feels, almost floory. That means మనకి యొక్క floor means మనకి different kinds of floors regularly we are using for our dinner purposes and eating purpose. So that when we compare these soils with our floor, మనకి మైదా పిండి గోధుమ పిండి ఉంటాయి, మనం పట్టుకున్నప్పుడు ఆ పార్టికల్ సైజ్ అనేది బాగా స్మూత్గా ఉంటుంది, మన చేతికి కూడా చాలా ఫైన్నెస్ అనేది తెలుస్తూ ఉంటుంది. లైక్ దీస్ సిల్టీ సాయిల్స్ ఆల్సో ఫీలింగ్ like that. That means the particle size will be lies as these flooring particles. They are explaining that when dry and when wet, that becomes smooth and mud, even you can form easily and into balls. That means a few amount of water drops will be added to those particular soil particles, and we have to make particular small size tiny balls. That means with the help of these soils, after that breaking we will observe some sort of unevenness in the particles due to these binding properties and others. Unevenness means మనకి ప్రాపర్గా రెగ్యులర్గా బ్రేక్ అయితే కనుక ఈవెన్నెస్ అంటాం, రెగ్యులర్గా బ్రేక్ అవ్వకుండా జిగ్జాగ్ ప్యాటర్న్ కనుక ఉంటే మనకి దట్ ఈస్ కాల్డ్ యాజ్ అన్ఈవెన్నెస్ ఇన్ ద సాయిల్స్. The silty soil is very wet. That means it will absorb more amount of water. It blends seamlessly with the water to form and fine running pebbles or mud. That means normally the silty soils will absorb in pebbles or mud particles, and particle size is varies from 0.02 to 0.05 millimeters. When the results in the very smooth structure, that means very smooth texture. In some cases these particles are used to construct small pots and others by using these clay and silt particles because of those binding properties and others. Next, silt properties, majorly we are having soil drains well but not as quickly as sand. That means మనకి వాటర్ మొత్తం కూడా ఈ సిల్ట్ సాయిల్ గుండా ఫ్లో అవుతుంది, కాకపోతే మనకి ఫాస్ట్గా అనేది మూవ్ అవ్వదు, బాగా స్లోగా మూవ్ అవుతుంది. అదే ఇక్కడ కంపేర్ చేశారు మనకి. సాయిల్ డ్రైన్స్ వెల్ బట్ నాట్ యాజ్ క్విక్లీ యాజ్ శాండ్. దట్ మీన్స్ there may be some amount of voids in these silty soils, but those voids are up to proper limit because of these particle sizes and this particle texture. That means మనకి నార్మల్గా టెక్స్చర్ మీన్స్ whenever we have to observe a particular soil particle on his top view, we will observe some hexagonal patterns, triangular patterns, trapezoidal patterns, like that. Due to those arrangement of these soil particles, we are having less quantity of voids compared to these sandy soils. That is the major content. Next one, we are having clay soils. These clay particles are finest among all the soil particles, measuring than the fewer than means less than. Normally we are having sandy soils ranges from 0.05 to 0.10, and the silty soils ranging from 0.002 to 0.05. But in case of these clay soils, these are very much lesser than the silty soils, like that, less than 0.02 millimeters their particle size is, and they stick together readily and form a sticky or gluey structure when they are wet or dry. That means when they are wet means if there is a binding material, the binding material is here, the clay material is the binding material. When we add some quantity of water to those, and they will stick to each other. That means there may be some gluey nature to these clay soils. When you gather the soil, clay soil into your hand, you can readily shape it into whatever form you want. That means whatever the shape we need to form, we have to form with the help of these clay soils, because of this cohesion and adhesion properties. Adhesion, adhesion properties. In these clay soils we have to form as shape as we required, and it will form a ball that doesn't break when squeezed. That means huge amount of binding properties, the balls will not break. But in case of sandy soils, there is no ball formation with the help of particles. Silty soils, we are having ball formation, they will break easily. But in case of these clay soils, breaking of balls is not easily after drying. Flexible ribbon squeezer are thin. Flexible ribbon when pressed between this thumb and forefinger. That means flexible means they will convert it into any shape, whatever direction we are giving pressure. That means along the longitudinal direction we are giving, those will be converted into straight lines like that. After the help of lateral direction, automatically they will form into lateral, like whatever the direction we are giving pressure on those particular soils, those will be turned into the direction because of this cohesion and adhesion properties. These things we will discuss in the next class.